Iran has reacted angrily to unprecedented attacks by the US targeting its nuclear facilities in Fordow, Isfahan, and Natanz. Donald Trump proudly announced his country's participation in Israel's illegal war against Iran through social media before he spoke in a televised address to the nation.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the three key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
Since this happened in the early hours of Iranian time, not much reaction was forthcoming, even though a couple of high ranking officials from the Iranian parliament said that there was no irreversible damage to Fordow, since Iran had already removed enriched uranium from the underground facility. This was echoed by a former American diplomat as well. You can watch my video on this here. However, within hours, Iran began to overwhelm key Israeli cities with ballistic missiles and drones, causing widespread damages and destruction. You can watch those videos on our Telegram channel. Details are on the screen. Even the BBC, notorious for its pro Israeli coverage, said the destruction caused by Iranian missiles was huge.
So this is Tel Aviv, and you can see there's a lot of destruction here. There was a direct hit in this residential neighborhood, so an entire building over there was destroyed, a lot of damage to this one over here, and you can see there's a lot of activity here, emergency services, police, a lot of work here to remove the rubble, clean up the area. So this happened this morning, just hours after those American B-2 bombers targeted those three key nuclear facilities in Iran. And at around 7 o'clock in the morning, air raid alerts sounded across the country, sending millions of people to shelters, safe rooms, warning them of the risk coming from those ballistic missiles. Now, the Israeli military is saying that most of those missiles that had been fired by Iran were intercepted by the country's air defenses. We heard loud explosions from those interceptions, and I think the fear here is that if this war continues, these Israeli attacks continue, more attacks like this are likely to happen.
BBC representatives said the target hit by one Iranian missile was a residential building. But following the malign tradition of the BBC, Iran would say Israel uses residential buildings as human shield, and Tehran never hits civilian targets. It was only targeting Israeli terrorists using residential buildings as a command and control center. How about that? Anyway, returning to the US participation in Israel's illegal war against a sovereign country, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has given his first reaction from Istanbul. He called the US a lawless bully who was determined to take the world to the law of the jungle. Listen to his reaction first.
Silence in the face of such blatant aggression will plunge the world into an unprecedented level of danger and chaos. Humanity has come too far as a species to allow a lawless bully to take us back to the law of the jungle. The Islamic Republic of Iran calls on the Security Council to convene an emergency session to unequivocally condemn the criminal act of aggression by the United States against Iran and to hold the administration in Washington accountable for its violations of fundamental principles of United Nations Charter and of norms of international law. The responsibility of the IAEA and its Director General, who who, through evident bias in favor of warmongering parties, paved the way for the current violence and bloodshed, is now clearer than ever. We call on the IAEA Board of Governors to immediately convene and carry out its legal responsibility in response to the dangerous US attack on Iran's peaceful nuclear facilities, all of which have been under the agency's full safeguards and monitoring. The world must not forget that it was the United States which, in the midst of a process to forge a diplomatic outcome, betrayed diplomacy by supporting the genocidal Israeli regime's launch of an illegal war of aggression on the Iranian nation. Not content with such malign actions, the United States itself has now also opted for a dangerous military operation and aggression against the people of Iran. In doing so, the US administration holds sole and full responsibility for the consequences of its actions, including the Islamic Republic of Iran's right to self-defense under the principles of the United Charter. In accordance with the UN Charter and its provisions allowing a legitimate response in self-defense, Iran reserves all options to defend its security, interests, and people.
What did you make of his speech? For some, Iran is still trying to seek sanity from those who believe in spreading chaos and terrorism across the world. Karachi is still urging United Nations Security Council to take note of the US action, despite knowing that this world body has become a joke. What is Karachi expecting from the UN Security Council? A condemnation? First, US would veto any condemnation against itself and its partner in crime, Israel. And even if the Security Council condemns the US action, how does it affect Trump or future US administrations? Since when did the US begin to respect global institutions? Haven't we watched despicable utterances from top US officials in the last 20 months showing utter disdain to such bodies? It's the same country which passed a law banning the funding to UNRWA, a key UN body which is a lifeline for the 6 million Palestinians across the Middle East. The US then imposed sanctions on the judges of the International Criminal Court because they issued an arrest warrant against a bloodthirsty terrorist called Benjamin Netanyahu. It has routinely vetoed any attempt to end the forced starvation of 2 million Palestinians in Gaza. It has blocked every single resolution criticizing the brutal action of the Israeli government targeting innocent and unarmed civilians. It continued to supply Israel with more lethal weapons, even after the rogue regime of Netanyahu butchered over 200 journalists, thousands of aid workers, hundreds of thousands of men, women, children, and babies, besides completely destroying Gaza. A lot of Iranians are now shocked on social media by the fact that Arakchi is still hoping for sanity from these barbarians whose actions are influenced by their medieval ideologies. They argue that no one else but the current ruling class in Iran is responsible for its ongoing humiliation. They say that for far too long, Tehran has followed the policy of diplomacy, even when its enemies heaped insults on the country. One example they give in defense of their argument is how Tehran showed its cowardice when Trump assassinated General Qasem Soleimani in 2020. Soleimani was no ordinary general. He was the commander of the elite Irani Quds force. Trump tore up the nuclear deal Iran had reached with the US and 5 other countries on its nuclear program. And yet, Ayatollah was still preaching against the need to conduct nuclear tests. His fatwa baffled many, as they wondered how having nuclear bombs as a deterrent was not in accordance with Islamic teachings. Iran watched helplessly even when Israel, with the help of the US, obliterated Hezbollah in Lebanon and toppled the Al Assad regime in Syria. Israel destroyed its embassy in Damascus, killed Iran's guest Ismail Haniya when he was visiting Tehran, conducted many more targeted assassinations, and all Tehran could do was fire drones after informing Israel and the US. This was last year when we were told that Iran could conduct nuclear tests within a couple of weeks if it so desired. But top individuals from the Iranian government, including Ali Shamkhani, was trying to sound intellectual by supporting the need to hold talks with the USA to curtail Iran's nuclear program.
We are ready.
Shamkhani is one of the few people in Iran authorized to speak about the sensitive negotiations.
We
can definitely have better relations with the U.S.
Shamkhani said that Iran is willing to commit to never having a nuclear weapon, to getting rid of its stockpiles of highly enriched uranium, to only enriching to a level needed for civilian use, and to allow inspectors in to oversee it all, in exchange for lifting all sanctions immediately.
The result? He was the first man that Israeli terrorists assassinated when Netanyahu launched his illegal war against Iran on 13th of June. Just imagine if Iran had developed nuclear weapons and carried out a test last year. Do you think Israel or the US would even dream of sending their warplanes in the direction of Tehran? The critics of the current Iranian government say that Iran has still not learned anything. They say that there comes a time when a country must choose between pragmatism and its self-respect. Iran's decision to opt for pragmatism, which many call it cowardice, has resulted in deaths, destruction, and now public humiliation. Araghchi's statement shows Iran is still trying to talk sense with the aggressors. Many experts have highlighted the options that Iran has at its disposal. They include targeting US military bases across the Middle East, blocking the Strait of Hormuz, and dragging the US into a full blown conflict, something Trump can ill afford given its monumental impact on the US and the world economy. Some may argue that Ayatollah is merely trying to protect his people. After all, he can't be seen to be so selfish that he will sacrifice his own people to satisfy his personal ego. Others say that Iran is dealing with the rogue regimes of Netanyahu and Donald Trump. No one can stop them from killing your people if they have made up their mind. All they have to do is to change the goalpost and then successfully manufacture consent with the help of Western media outlets. There would have been outrage if any other country had slaughtered hundreds of thousands of people over the period of 20 months before attacking a sovereign country. But we all saw how the Western media outlets found justification even for those despicable crimes against humanity. In the case of Iran, same media outlets were quick to justify Israel's illegal attack by blaming Iran's nuclear program. Israel and the US have now changed the goalpost and are proudly talking about the regime change and assassination of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. And there is zero pushback from the media. No wonder. There are a lot of conversations on social media with critics of Israel and the US saying that Iran's policy of pragmatism would see the total annihilation of the Islamic Republic. That's it from me. Thank you very much for your support of this platform and our journalism on buymeacoffee.com and Patreon. If you too think that our journalism is worth supporting, then you too should consider becoming part of it. Details are there in the description of this video. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.